Growing up, Michael always made sure I knew exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. He was the golden child, the valedictorian with the flawless GPA, the full scholarship to MIT, the one mom proudly talked about to every neighbor within earshot. I was the practical one, as they like to phrase it, the dependable one. The kid who spent summers sweating in a warehouse while Michael polished his resume with internships at Fortune 500 corporations. Sarah's different, Mom would say to relatives with a tight smile. Not everyone is meant to be brilliant like Michael. He's more hands-on. The words were always delivered gently, almost kindly, which somehow made them hurt even more. I learned early how to smile, how to nod, how to act unbothered. What no one realized was that those long warehouse summers were giving me an education no classroom could match. I saw how supply chains actually functioned, how tiny inefficiencies quietly drained millions, how timing, coordination, and human behavior mattered more than elegant theory. While Michael analyzed case studies from textbooks, I was living inside them, hauling pallets and tracking shipments and watching a manager scramble to fix mistakes that could have been prevented. After college, Michael co-founded TechFlow Solutions with a couple of his MIT friends. Their pitch was sleek and impressive, AI-powered logistics optimization designed to transform warehouse operations. Ironically, it targeted the very world I had come to understand intimately. The company took off faster than anyone expected. Within 3 years, they were signing contracts with Amazon, FedEx, and Walmart. Michael became the pride of the family overnight. "My son, the tech entrepreneur," Dad would declare at every gathering, his chest swelling with pride. 26 years old and already worth 8 figures. Meanwhile, I continued moving between warehouse jobs, switching companies every year or so. To them, it looked like I couldn't settle down. To me, it was deliberate. Each new warehouse meant another system to study, another flaw to analyze, another layer of understanding. At family events, Michael would clap a hand on my shoulder in that patronizing way of his. "Still doing the manual labor thing?" he'd say with a grin. "Well, someone has to keep the wheels turning for innovators like us." He never once asked why I kept changing jobs. He never questioned how I seemed to know so much about the mechanics behind his software. He didn't wonder why, during Thanksgiving dinners, I asked pointed questions about algorithm adaptability or real-time floor constraints. He was too busy enjoying his role as the genius of the family. What he didn't see was that I had been building something quietly in the background. Those warehouse positions weren't stepping stones. They were field research. Every facility I worked in exposed another blind spot in systems like his. I began to notice major gaps between what TechFlow promised and what actually happened on warehouse floors. By 24, I'd designed my own logistics optimization model. It wasn't flashy. It didn't rely on trendy AI buzzwords. It was grounded in lived experience. It accounted for human unpredictability, equipment downtime, and real-world constraints. And it worked. Where TechFlow claimed a 12% efficiency boost, mine delivered 34%. I launched small, framing it as a consulting firm focused on warehouse efficiency solutions. 1 client turned into 5. 5 turned into 20. Soon, Fortune 100 companies were quietly transitioning away from TechFlow's platform and toward my system because it simply produced better results. Within 2 years, my firm was generating $50 million annually. I poured every dollar back into expanding technology, acquiring smaller competitors, and building infrastructure. Yet, I kept my personal life unchanged. I wore the same understated outfits to family dinners. I drove the same aging Honda. I let them continue believing I was just another warehouse worker clocking in and out. The irony was almost poetic, because Michael never saw me as competition. He never guarded against me. When TechFlow needed fresh capital for expansion, my investment firm, carefully structured through layers of shell corporations, stepped in as a major funding source. Michael believed he had secured backing from an anonymous venture capital group impressed by his innovation. He had no clue that the so-called failure sister was financing his ambitions. Quietly, strategically, I increased my stake with each round. By the time Thanksgiving arrived this year, I owned 73% of TechFlow Solutions. Michael held 15%. His MIT co-founders divided the remaining 12%. On paper, he was still CEO, still the public face, still the celebrated visionary. Thanksgiving dinner unfolded the way it always did. Michael pulled into the driveway in his brand-new Tesla, talking loudly before he even made it through the door. Just signed a $40 million contract with UPS, he announced proudly, making sure everyone heard. TechFlow is changing the game. The family clustered around him, eager for details, praising his brilliance. I sat at the far end of the table, quietly moving food around my plate. "Sarah, how's the warehouse treating you?" Aunt Linda asked sweetly, the question clearly intended as a contrast to Michael's success story. "Same as usual," I replied calmly. "Steady work." Michael chuckled. "That's Sarah for you. Dependable, but not exactly aiming to build an empire. Not everyone's cut out for that, right, sis?" Laughter rippled down the table. The conversation kept circling back to his company, his milestones, his glowing future. Cousin Jate, who worked in TechFlow's marketing department, shot me sympathetic looks as if I were someone to be pitied. Then Uncle Robert shifted the direction of the evening. "Michael, I keep hearing about big partnership opportunities in tech. Jake mentioned possibly investing in something major. Maybe it's time to bring some family money into this." Michael's eyes sparkled immediately. "Funny you mention that. We're entering our next expansion phase, autonomous vehicle logistics. There's room for strategic investors." Dad leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of investment are we talking about?" "For around 5% equity," Michael said confidently, "you're looking at about $10 million, but that's for serious investors only, people who truly understand the tech space." Jake nearly jumped out of his chair. "I've got $2 million saved, been waiting for the right opportunity." "That's a solid start," Michael replied approvingly. "But remember, this is high-level business. Not everyone is prepared for that kind of commitment." Jake's gaze shifted to me. "Good thing Sarah's not in the market for something like this. No offense, but you'd need serious capital." Michael followed his look and smirked. "Yeah, no offense, Sarah, but this isn't exactly your league. We're talking $10 million here. You work in a warehouse. This is venture capital territory." Cousin Jake nodded eagerly. "You're too poor to be a business partner," he said with a grin. "Stick to your warehouse job." The table erupted in laughter. Even Mom smiled. "Jake's just being honest, dear. Michael's company's for serious investors." I looked around the table at their faces. Michael's patronizing smirk, Jake's obvious pleasure at putting me in my place, Dad's approving nod at what he saw as appropriate boundaries, Mom's gentle but dismissive smile. "You're absolutely right," I said quietly, returning to my turkey. "I should stick to what I know." The conversation moved on. Michael and Jake spent the next hour planning Jake's investment. Michael explained how Jake would get 0.2% of the company for his $2 million, a steal for family, he said generously. I listened to every word while finishing my dinner in silence. Michael had no idea he was selling Jake shares in a company that I controlled. Jake had no idea he was about to invest in a business that could disappear overnight if I decided to pull my funding. After dinner, I helped Mom clean dishes while the men continued their business talk in the living room. "Don't feel bad about not being included," Mom whispered as we loaded the dishwasher. "Michael's just trying to protect you from losing money you don't have." "I appreciate that," I said, meaning it in a way she couldn't understand. I left early, citing a long day at work tomorrow. Michael barely looked up from his conversation with Jake to wave goodbye. "See you at Christmas, sis. Maybe by then you'll have gotten that promotion to supervisor." The laughter followed me out the door. I drove home to my modest apartment, the same one I'd lived in for 3 years, despite being able to afford a mansion. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. My phone showed 17 missed calls from my portfolio manager, David Chin. He'd been trying to reach me all evening, probably with updates on the quarterly reports. David managed my investment portfolio through Meridian Capital, the firm I'd used to acquire my stake in TechFlow. I called him back at 9 p.m. "Sarah, thank God." David's voice was urgent. "I've been trying to reach you for hours. We need to discuss the TechFlow situation." "What about it?" "Their Q3 reports came in today. The company is in serious trouble. Revenue projections are down 40% from last quarter. They're burning through cash faster than projected, and their main competitor just launched a superior product. Michael Kim doesn't know it yet, but TechFlow is about 6 months from bankruptcy without additional funding." I wasn't surprised. I'd been watching TechFlow's real numbers for months through my majority ownership. Michael was brilliant at marketing and raising money, but terrible at actual business operations. His AI system looked impressive in demos, but failed in real-world applications. Companies were quietly switching to competitors, including my consulting firm, but Michael was too focused on fundraising to notice. "What are my options?" I asked. "Well, you own 73% of the company. You could inject additional capital to keep it afloat, but honestly, it would be throwing good money after bad. The technology gap is too wide to close. Or you could liquidate your position, withdraw your investment, and let the company restructure. Michael would lose control, but the technology and employee base might be valuable to an acquirer." I thought about Michael's laughing face at dinner, Jake's dismissive comments, the family's automatic assumption that I was too poor and stupid to understand business. "David, I want you to arrange an immediate liquidation of all Meridian Capital holdings in TechFlow Solutions. Full withdrawal." There was a pause. "Sarah, that's $94 million. If we pull that out, the company will collapse within weeks. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. And the timing, we could structure this over several months to minimize." "No. I want it done first thing Monday morning. Full withdrawal, immediate notice to TechFlow management. That will cause a lot of chaos. Michael Kim will be completely blindsided." "That's the point." David sighed. "All right, I'll have the paperwork ready by 8 a.m. Monday. This will definitely make the business news. TechFlow's collapse will be pretty public." "Good. One more thing. I want Jake Morrison's pending investment blocked. Put TechFlow in emergency restructuring before he can transfer any funds." "Consider it done." "Sarah, can I ask why the sudden decision?" I thought about how to explain it. "Let's just say I had dinner with the CEO tonight, and I've decided I don't want to be in business with him anymore." Monday morning, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when my phone rang at exactly 8:47 a.m. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, then again. By 9:15, I had 12 missed calls from Michael and 6 from Jake. Finally, I answered. "Sarah." Michael's voice was panicked, shouting, "Sarah, I need to talk to you right now." "What's wrong?" I asked calmly. "Everything. My company, TechFlow, our main investor, just pulled out. $94 million gone. They gave notice this morning and they want everything liquidated immediately." "Oh no, that sounds terrible." "It is terrible. I don't understand what happened. Meridian Capital was supposed to be a long-term partner. Now they're saying the investment was tied to performance metrics, and we didn't meet targets." I could hear papers shuffling in the background, other voices talking rapidly. Michael was clearly at the office, probably in an emergency meeting. "I'm so sorry to hear that," I said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" What? "We know, Sarah. This is a $94 million problem. I needed to tell someone in the family. Dad's going to kill me. I'm going to lose everything." "What about Jake's investment? Didn't he say he had $2 million?" Michael's laugh was bitter. "Jake? His money's blocked. The company's in emergency restructuring. Nobody can invest now until we figure out this mess. His $2 million wouldn't save us anyway. We need the full 94 back or something close to it." "Have you tried calling other investors?" Sarah, you don't understand. This isn't about finding 2 or 3 million. This is about replacing a $94 million investment that got pulled overnight. There aren't that many people in the world who have that kind of money just sitting around. That does sound difficult, I agreed. Through the phone, I could hear someone calling Michael's name urgently. I have to go, he said. The lawyers are here. Sarah, don't tell the family about this yet, okay? I need to figure out if there's any way to save the company first. Of course. Good luck. I hung up and finished my coffee. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from Jake. Did Michael call you? Something's wrong with TechFlow. My investment got blocked. I texted back. He mentioned some investor problems. Sounds complicated. Jake? Complicated? Sarah, I was going to make serious money on this. This was my chance to get rich like Michael. Me? I'm sure you'll find other opportunities. Jake, easy for you to say. You're not losing $2 million. I almost pointed out that Jake wasn't losing $2 million. He never had the chance to invest it, but I decided to let him stay angry. By Wednesday, the news broke publicly. TechFlow Solutions, the revolutionary AI logistics startup, was filing for emergency restructuring after their primary investor withdrew $94 million in funding. Michael's face was all over the tech blogs, looking haggard and defeated. The articles were brutal. Startup founder loses $100 million company overnight. TechFlow Solutions, from rising star to bankruptcy in 72 hours. The fastest rise and fall in tech history. Michael stopped answering my calls. Jake stopped texting. The family group chat went silent. By Friday, I received a call from my consulting firm's CFO. Sarah, you're not going to believe this. 3 of TechFlow's biggest clients just reached out. They want to switch to our system immediately. They're offering a combined contract worth $67 million annually. Which clients? UPS, Amazon, and FedEx. Apparently, TechFlow's system was never actually working as advertised. They were manually correcting the AI recommendations behind the scenes. Now that TechFlow is gone, they need real solutions. I smiled. Accept all 3 contracts and promote Jennifer to head of client relations. She'll handle the transitions. This is going to put us in the top 5 logistics consulting firms in the country. I know that weekend, Dad called me directly. Sarah, have you talked to Michael recently? A few days ago, he mentioned some business troubles. Business troubles? Dad's voice was strained. Sarah, he lost everything, the entire company. He had to move back in with us. He's devastated. I'm sorry to hear that. The thing is, he keeps talking about this investor, Meridian Capital, says they destroyed his company for no reason. He's talking about lawsuits, but the lawyers say there's nothing he can do. The investment was legitimate, and they had the right to withdraw. That sounds frustrating. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. My heart rate didn't change. Of course, Dad. Michael is convinced there's something personal about this. He thinks someone specifically targeted his company. He's been going through the investor documentation trying to figure out who actually owns Meridian Capital. Did he find anything? That's what I'm calling about. The company is owned by a series of shell corporations, but there's a name that keeps appearing in the paperwork. Someone named S. Morrison. Sarah Morrison. I paused for exactly 3 seconds. Dad, Morrison is a pretty common name. I know, but Michael is fixated on this. He keeps saying it's too much of a coincidence, a Morrison destroying his company right after Jake Morrison was supposed to invest. What are you asking me exactly? Dad's voice became gentle. Sarah, honey, I need you to tell me straight. Do you know anything about this Meridian Capital situation? I looked around my modest apartment, at my secondhand furniture and 10-year-old TV, at the warehouse uniform hanging by the door for my shift tomorrow morning. Dad, do you really think I have $94 million to invest in anything? The question hung in the air. Dad's silence stretched long enough that I could hear him thinking it through. His daughter, who worked in a warehouse, who drove a Honda Civic, who lived in a one-bedroom apartment and worried about grocery bills. Finally, he laughed. You're right. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Michael's just desperate to blame someone. The idea that you could be involved in high-level venture capital is, well, it's ridiculous. It's okay, Dad. Michael's going through a lot. He is. Listen, could you maybe call him? He needs family support right now. And maybe don't mention Jake's investment thing. He's pretty bitter about that falling through. Of course, I'll call him tonight. Thanks, Sarah. You're a good sister. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking Michael was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He traced the ownership back far enough to find my name. If he kept digging, if he hired the right forensic accountants, he might eventually connect all the dots. But he wouldn't, because the one thing Michael could never overcome was his absolute certainty that his little sister was too poor and stupid to outmaneuver him. I called Michael that evening. Sarah. His voice was hollow, exhausted. Dad told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Yeah, well, everything's gone. 5 years of work, just gone. What will you do now? I don't know. Start over, I guess. Maybe get a job at another tech company, pay off debts. Mom and Dad are letting me stay here for a while. That's good. Family support is important. Sarah, can I ask you something? Sure. Last week at Thanksgiving, when Jake said that thing about you being too poor to be a business partner, I laughed at you. I remember. I feel like a Bia about that now. Here I am, 30 years old, living with my parents again, and you've got a steady job in your own place. Maybe being practical isn't such a bad thing. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Everyone has ups and downs, I said. You'll figure it out. Yeah. Listen, I'm going to keep investigating this Meridian Capital thing. Something about the timing feels personal, you know? Like someone wanted to destroy me specifically. Maybe it was just bad business. Maybe. But if I find out someone deliberately sabotaged my company, Michael's voice hardened, if someone in our family was involved somehow, that would be unforgivable. Of course it would. Anyway, thanks for calling. It means a lot. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and checked my bank balances. Between my consulting firm and various investments, my net worth had crossed $400 million sometime last month. Tomorrow, I'd go back to my warehouse job. I'd wear my uniform and punch my time card and let my coworkers see me as just another employee trying to pay the bills. But tonight, I allowed myself a small smile. The family that had spent 15 years dismissing me as the poor failure was about to learn exactly how expensive that mistake had been. Michael's phone was still ringing, and it would keep ringing until he figured out what I'd known all along. Sometimes the person you underestimate the most is the one with the most power to destroy you. He just had to be smart enough to see it, and smart enough to admit that his little sister had been playing a game he never even knew existed.